What's that? Oh, happy if you want to. I'm happy to do it, but click the button. Good. Yeah, that was really. I really enjoyed the one we just had. On simulations, that was really interesting, isn't it? Yeah, that's been really interesting. Great to have a different perspective on the different types of organisations, because you get a bit, I guess, stuck in your ways, isn't it? Like once you're in an institution. How have you been enjoying it? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Where do you work? Okay. In Adfa. Yeah. We had a little tour this morning. That was good too. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, we did. That was excellent to see the perspective. It's huge, all the grounds and everything. I suppose we'll get started. Okay.
Good morning and welcome. Just a bit of housekeeping to begin with. Unfortunately, Stephen Collins will not be joining us today, and so I just wanted to let you know that if you were planning on going to that session after this, we're now directing people to Lessons from the Future, which will be in LT7. And without further ado, I will introduce Fiona Nicholson, who's an educational developer at Macquarie University.
Thank you. So the paper that I'm talking about today is looking at some examples of using social media to embed professional contexts into the curriculum in higher education. As you know, I'm from Macquarie University, so our examples are specific to that particular context. I'd like to start just by asking you to think about your student body, those students that you are preparing, designing learning environments for, preparing your teaching materials and so on for. And I'm just going to ask you a few questions and see what you think. How important is it for your students to make connections or to know what's going on with their current professions? Is it important for them to know what's happening now? Is it important for them to actually connect with people or just know what's happening?
I think it depends which year they're in. When they're in first year, they're in this scenario and whatnot, but by the time they're getting through their degree, they're starting to really think about where to next, and especially if they're doing placements and stuff like that.
So actually making connections and starting up little conversations on things that they're researching, things that they're finding out about. And last question, are your students likely to need digital literacy skills when they hit the workplace? Okay. So if you've sort of thought yes to a couple of those questions, we're probably in agreement that it is important, there is some value to having the students access their workplaces during their study. And social media can obviously be an effective way of doing that, and also quite an efficient way, an easy way, if you like, of doing that. At the same time, the students are developing their digital literacy skills, and that's what I'd like to focus on today. There is, in fact, an argument in the research that it is our responsibility in higher education institutions to actually to equip our students with these digital literacy skills. And that's one of the challenges that we have, to find ways to do that adequately. Just a quick look at a definition of digital literacy to add to Mike Keppel's definitions yesterday. This one's a little bit different. I like it because it focuses on that process of meaning making in digital contexts. And I think because of that focus on meaning making, it does relate quite nicely to our learning and teaching processes in higher education. We're always asking our students to make meaning out of what they're reading, what they're talking about, etc. Hobbes takes that definition a little bit further and has created this cycle of competencies, digital literacy competencies. And she argues that these are actually core competencies for citizenship in our very media-rich, information-saturated digital workplace and society. So she would certainly argue that students need all of these competencies as part of their digital literacy. So things like finding information, deciding whether or not it's of any value, so analysing that, looking at how it relates to what they're studying, who wrote it, what's the purpose of that information that they're finding, creating their own content, and that means using the sorts of technological tools that are available to people, and then reflecting on that and thinking about how useful it was. Should that content be shared? Could it be communicated in a different way? And then actually sharing that knowledge in the action, and perhaps taking a more community approach to solving problems in terms of sharing that knowledge with others. To me, that cycle speaks very clearly to our sort of constructivist approach in higher education. It's very much about the students deciding, the students creating, and the students becoming part of a community. So social media can help the students to develop those competencies, and it can also help students to explore the practical applications of their more academic research. And practically, it can also help them to connect with professionals in the field. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, is how social media can achieve those three purposes. And we'll look at examples from two different units at Macquarie. The first example is a project that I worked on with Sherry Love, who's an educational designer at Macquarie, and Dr. Mitch Parcell, who's the Associate Dean of Learning and Teaching in Human Sciences. And we were looking at how social media could be embedded into the learning and assessment processes of a particular unit. And this was a postgraduate, inquiry-driven early childhood unit. So within this unit, the students were asked to, at the beginning of the course, choose an area of research that they were interested in, and just engage in academic inquiry into that topic. So very classic for university, journals, databases, books, etc., finding out what was the current state of thought on that topic. But in addition to that, the students are also asked to find out what is happening professionally on that topic. So find out what professionals are thinking, find out what the community's thinking. I mean, in this particular topic, it's early childhood, so community groups had quite an important role and an important voice for the students to be aware of. And the idea is that they're finding out about the practical application to their academic research, using social media to do that. The product, their assessment task, is a digital artefact. And within that digital artefact, the students need to certainly show their insights into their academic research, but also show how they've engaged with social media to find out those practical insights to what's happening in the field. And the task we called a distributed digital essay. Has anyone familiar with Storify? Used Storify? Yeah. So Storify is really very useful, very easy to use. Pretty much it helps students to just gather all the social media posts, whether it's just something they've found or something they've actually contributed, drag and drop it into this digital artefact. So it's just an easy way of compiling those social media posts. Freely available, mobile friendly, etc. So I'll just give you an example of the distributed digital essay. So as I said, this was early childhood. The topic is about the importance of children engaging in risky play. Certainly, you don't need to read the detail there, but I just wanted you to have an overview. That's pretty much a review of the current literature on the topic. So that academic rigor is very important and present. Obviously, that's short. This is just a sample. But it also includes peer discourse and professional voices. So within that one text, you've got the academic perspective, and you've also got what are people saying about it at the moment in organisations, what do professionals think. I guess in terms of getting the students to produce that kind of text, it's important that they're able to access the social media from the beginning of the course. And that takes time to do. Depending on the students and how familiar they are with social media, they may need quite a lot of support. They might actually need you to give them an example and so on of how to go about things. I guess we assume that students are really au fait with social media, and sometimes they are for entertainment purposes, but not necessarily for their learning. So it's quite important to give them clear expectations, help scaffold for them the process that they're expected to follow through with. Keeping in mind that constructivist, collaborative learning doesn't just automatically occur, and you have to plan that as the teacher. So in this case, the students created their accounts, their social media accounts, and they started to find people that were talking about what they were interested in. And that can be a bit of a challenge in itself. It's useful if the convener has a strong digital identity, which can sometimes be the case, sometimes not. But if it is, that can be great because the students can follow their teacher, and that can just give them a few insights. The teacher can set up perhaps a class hashtag and send through links that are relevant to the students' research. The goal is for the students to actually start to develop a bit of a digital identity themselves in terms of their area of research interest, so different to their social digital identity. And what we'd certainly be encouraging is that the students are going beyond just lurking in the background. So it's more that the students are actually feeling brave enough to contribute something. And I think students are more likely to do that if they are talking or finding appropriate content that is relevant to what they're researching, because they do know things. They're on top of the current research, they can share that, they can ask questions about it. So they do have something to say. And in the process of doing that, they're building their digital literacy skills as well. So the idea behind this kind of task is certainly using social media for that knowledge building through dialogue, creating knowledge, sharing knowledge. And with Storify, they can actually publish their story or their artifact and then share their URL with these connections that they've made throughout the process. So it's really widening the audience for their writing as well. So it's going beyond just that limited LMS cohort. Just a few comments from the students who were involved. This is running again this session, so we're still gathering feedback from the students. Certainly, students focusing on the usefulness of connecting with peers, the fact that the social media is helping them to ground their academic research with more practical context. They like the chance to weigh up what they think against professionals. They think, oh, that, do they agree or not? What's the gap? And just generally building that digital literacy in order to make those connections with professionals as well. in this particular group, they're people that are doing masters in early childhood, and quite often they're the only person with a higher education background in those working environments. So the connections that they make during this unit can actually be a really great source for them to continue with some of those lines of inquiry that they start at university, because they don't really have the people in that institution to talk to or to discuss things with necessarily in this particular context. Okay, so the second example is it's about using social media to maintain an alumni community. And the community has two purposes. One is to support new professionals that are entering into the teaching field. And the second one is to facilitate those alumni actually contributing to the current teacher education program at the university. We're going to look at one particular teacher education unit. This particular convener makes a very concerted effort to build community in her classes. She encourages students very much to see themselves as professionals starting out during their study, and to see their peers in the class as future colleagues. And in fact, they usually are future colleagues because they're out there teaching in Sydney schools. You know, they're people that they've studied with and now they're teaching with. So the result of that is that they do have a really nice, strong community during the program. While the students are studying, the convener does flip the classroom, flip the curriculum. So she has these very active face-to-face workshops, and she also has, instead of giving traditional lectures, she replaces the lectures with interactive, collaborative activities and resources in the online space using Moodle. So that's a screenshot from the Moodle unit. Every week's divided into workshop and online preparation. The online preparation is for the following week. And you can see there's a nice range of activities. So there's a reading about Board of Studies policies. The students then do a reflection on how that might relate to their teaching. They watch a video. The videos, which I'll mention in a moment, sometimes it's the lecturer themselves, sometimes it's actually the alumni. A little quiz about the video, and then a wiki where the students are actually working together to come up with some kind of lesson plan or ideas for a task or something like that. So because she's flipped the curriculum, the teacher has actually started to extend the community in her classroom to the online space. So she's got a great collaborative feeling in the class. That carries across during the program to the online space due to the flipped. So when it comes to the end of the program, the students are quite familiar with communicating online, etc. So when she actually then asks them to join an online community using Facebook after the end of their program, it's just a natural extension for them into that online community. And that's what she does. So for each class, they have their Facebook group. They share resources, they share experiences. They've just come to a new school. What's it like? What worked well for them? What didn't, etc. And there's this very vibrant community happening where the students are sharing experiences, sharing resources, and supporting each other in their early career, which is really nice. The benefit, obviously, for the alumni is they feel like the support they've had at university is continuing on. And then for the teacher education program, there's really strong benefits as well. So for one thing, it's really convenient and easy to contact the alumni because the convener's in touch with them. But also, the students are in this sort of sense of you know, lifelong learning. I'm still with the people that I studied with. Now I'm in my job. You know, the idea of contributing back to the curriculum at the university is almost a natural occurrence. So often they become master teachers for the students, for the current students. Guest speakers, they come and talk about high needs schools and, you know, what's good strategies for that. I've just been working on a project with alumni where they've actually produced video resources for the flipped curriculum. So you can see there, those two girls are talking about classroom management, are teaching in high needs schools. They're talking specifically about what works for them in their context. The one in the corner there is an Aboriginal educator talking about how to address those sorts of students in the classroom to maximise learning opportunities. Even how to do well in your Department of Education and Community interviews. So the response from students is really, current students is really positive, because for them it's an authentic resource. They're listening to their peers. They feel like it's real. And they find it really valuable. So both of the examples that I've talked about have social media as a key component, certainly. And the students are being asked to apply those digital literacies in both contexts. Certainly in the distributed digital essay, the flipped classroom, the alumni community, they're all doing those competencies, putting them into practice. And I'd like to suggest also, just to finish off on, that these are examples of the community of inquiry. So you're probably familiar with Garrison's community of inquiry model. Most people nodding there, but there's three key elements to that model: the cognitive presence, social presence, and teaching presence. And the idea is that an online community of inquiry needs all of those elements to be successful. In terms of the cognitive presence, that's about students constructing meaning or meaning making, similar to our digital literacy definition, through reflection and discourse. So if you think about the distributed digital essay, for example, the students are reflecting on their academic research. They're then discussing it using the social media, so that's the cognitive presence. Same with the alumni. The alumni are reflecting on what they're teaching. They're talking to their peers about that. How could it be improved, etc. You've got that cognitive presence very strongly. The social presence, how the students are projecting themselves as real people online. Certainly with the alumni, there's a very strong social presence because they already have established that identity with the face-to-face classes, etc., and online with the flipped curriculum. And then they just carry that naturally across to their alumni community. So very strong cognitive and social presence. The teaching presence is an interesting one because I'd suggest that early on, in both of those examples, the teaching presence is really important and quite strong and directive. Certainly Garrison talks about it being directive. And it needs to be, because you need to be scaffolding the learning, setting up expectations, etc. But then as those communities take over, the role of the teacher becomes as a peer. For the alumni, they're no longer the source of all knowledge. The students are. Not that they generally would be the source of all knowledge entirely in the program either, but certainly it's a shift in the role to the students, to the teacher becoming a peer, rather than necessarily directing things. So certainly I'd argue that this idea of the community of inquiry aligns very nicely to Hobbes' key competencies as well. And those digital literacies are essential to being able to communicate and being able to participate in these types of online communities. So I think the benefit of embedding digital literacies and professional contexts into our courses certainly goes beyond our immediate classroom, and helps the students to genuinely become active participants in the workplaces, but also continuing to be active participants to the discipline through that community as well. Just some references there, which are available in my slides in the Moodle unit. So I think we've got a bit of time for questions, if anyone has any.
We're looking at this at the moment for our organisation, and one of the questions that keeps coming up is privacy and emails. Do they access it through their own private emails, and keeping that teacher-student separation, or should they be accessing it through like the organisation email address, which they might be given because they haven't been set up with that? And what's your experience with that?
So generally, we'd encourage people to, in terms of Twitter, for example, they can set up their own, just their specific, even course-related Twitter address, so that it's separate from all their sort of social identity and social posts and so on. It shouldn't really impact on email terribly much. Certainly, you can set up the Facebook account completely separate, and so most of the communication is happening on the social media, not through the work email. And I think it's important to keep it separate as much as, you know, I guess it's a personal decision, but keep it as separate as possible.
What the context was, because I couldn't hear the question.
The question related to privacy and using professional email addresses to be part of these communities. Yes.
Can I first of all say that in relation to your alumni thing, I'd like to support that. It's something that we do as well.
Yeah.
Topic that I run, and it's very successful. The only things that I would say about it is that, first up, why not use LinkedIn, which tends to be the more professional space? It may be that in your discipline that's not used, but for us, LinkedIn is.
Yeah.
And so we certainly encourage our students to use LinkedIn, keep their private social life in their social spaces and their business life in their business spaces, and that gets over some of that privacy issue. The other thing is that for teaching, we encourage our students to stay within our LMS for a range of reasons, and one is that while we don't necessarily interfere and it can be just as social a space, there is some control and we can see, if necessary, what they're doing.
Yeah.
So again, I think that answers that space. So that's, I guess, my two things. But certainly, I think you can, in an LMS, create that sort of environment where there's a lot of interaction, a lot of peer support, a lot of other things, and an enormous amount of engagement. We know that can be done. And the analogy I use is that no matter what workspace they go into, there will be a workspace system that they are going to have to use for that sort of communication in a professional sense. So they may as well get used to using it now and not thinking about going out into social media for something that is in fact work.
It depends